I'm Will. I'm working on a PhD about how white people can be more actively against racism. Where do you see a need to resist today? Are you wanting to deepen your ability to pursue justice for all? In this video series, let's develop shared memory about people and resistance movements whose footsteps we can follow in today. When you think about the Underground Railroad, you probably think about Harriet Tubman. But if you were her, or another person escaping, where would you actually go? As it turns out, a few key cities form the backbone of the Underground Railroad, leading people away from the slave states towards safety in New England, upstate New York, and Canada. What can we learn for our resistance today from activists in those cities? I find 4 tips in Eric Foner's new book, Gateway to Freedom, The Hidden History of the Underground Railroad, in this video of Justice for All. 1. Find your one small piece. The Underground Railroad originally started in the 1830s. Black people in free states, including children, were being kidnapped. And as long as you could find a judge who would say, yeah, they were probably your slave, you could take them away. So in 1835, the New York Vigilance Committee was started by David Ruggles. The Vigilance Committee was interracial. It gave assistance legally to kidnap black people. It pushed public opinion on those kidnapping laws, and yeah, they hosted runaway slaves. The Vigilance Committee idea spread to other cities because, as David Ruggles put it, hosting runaway slaves was practical abolition. Few people at a time. It didn't help the system, and it didn't really help black people who were free who were facing discrimination. And they took flack for that too, from other abolitionist organizations that didn't really want to share funds with them. But if we want to learn from the Underground Railroad specifically, it means finding our one small piece as we seek justice for all. As I think about myself, it's appropriate that this tip begins this series, because this video series is my one small piece. What about for you? 2. Get under their skin. The Underground Railroad helped maybe 1,000 to 5,000 people a year, which is nothing compared to the millions of people held in slavery in the South. But, depending on how far north they were, the organizations that coordinated the Underground Railroad were actually pretty open about illegally harboring fugitives. They would boast about how many people they had saved. They would hold fundraisers. In fact, the whole idea of Christmas shopping was an abolitionist invention as a fundraising tactic. This all made the South, and not even the border states where almost all runaways came from, but the deep South, so riled up that they passed the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850, which made Northerners help in recapturing slaves. Black people who had already escaped bore the brunt of this act. But Northerners got so mad that it ended up becoming one of the causes of the Civil War. The Underground Railroad then teaches us to get under their skin. For me, that means taking my cues and resistance from the people who are going to suffer the most from any kind of backlash. 3. It's okay to have different approaches to the same goal. It might sound obvious, but different people approached helping fugitive slaves in different ways. For instance, in New York, the Tappan brothers thought that abolition should be led by men who were devout Christians and who spoke to as broad an audience as possible. But in Boston, followers of William Lloyd Garrison promoted women and felt like it didn't really count unless you denounced those pious churchgoers who actually supported slavery financially. In 1840, the Tappan brothers split, and the organization was divided into 2. It's easy to blame the Tappans there for being too conservative. But down the line, the Garrisonians created their own rift when they were too radical for Frederick Douglass, since he wanted to reform the American system rather than burn it down. It's tough. The way we resist does matter in itself. But I just keep coming back to, in this case, how each split left black people stuck, because it weakened the network of support that the Underground Railroad provided. I feel challenged to build bridges. How are you bearing with, or even welcoming, people who have a different approach to the same goal as you? 4. Support the super involved. The Underground Railroad ended when the Union started taking parts of the South in 1861. At first, Abraham Lincoln actually tried to give enslaved people who had escaped to the army camp back to their owners. What a moderate. But eventually he gave up and freed the slaves. Through its whole history, the Underground Railroad was always underfunded and run by a core group of people who were overworked and tended to burn out pretty quickly. My favorite was Louis Napoleon, the number 2 guy in the New York branch. There was this law that if you took a slave to a free state, they became free. So Louis Napoleon would go through the docks hunting for boats where masters had just tried to bring their slaves through New York, and then he would rescue them. How are we supporting the super involved in the resistance movements we're part of? Overall, I thank the agents and the organizers of the Underground Railroad for your example. And thank you for watching. May justice come for all.